Welcome to CommercialDrones.fm, the podcast that explores the commercial drone industry, the people who power it, and the concepts that drive it. I'm your host, Ian Smith. Commercial Drones FM is supported by Deveron UAS. Deveron UAS is building a standardized drone network for farmers all across North America, offering on-demand, near real-time field-level data when you want it. To learn more about how you can achieve scalable data collection in agriculture, visit deveronuas.com. That's deveronuas.com. Hey everybody, and welcome to Commercial Drones FM. Ian Smith here, and I am sitting with Karen Jackson, the Secretary of Technology for the Commonwealth of Virginia in Dallas, Texas at AUVSI's Exponential Conference, which is the largest drone and robotics and unmanned conference in the world. Thank you so much for joining us today, Karen.
Thanks for having me here.
It was absolutely my pleasure. And a little bit of a story, the background behind this is actually a previous podcast guest on Commercial Drones FM was Harrison Wolf from episode number 43. And Harrison introduced Karen and myself and wanted to make sure that Karen could get on the show. So again, thanks Harrison, and thank you Karen so much for being here. So starting off, you in Virginia, I found this. I was doing a little Twitter stalking, and I found out, before this podcast, and you in Virginia have a slogan. Is that correct?
We do. We have just recently come up with our own trademark slogan of Virginia is for unmanned systems lovers.
So that's the slogan. Virginia is for unmanned systems lovers.
Absolutely. We play off the Virginia is for lovers brand, obviously, that Virginia has had. It's one of the oldest trademarks for a tourism logo. And so
it might be a slogan.
It might be a slogan.
It's like a slogan logo.
But we're very happy to have it. It's brand new, and this is actually the first time that we've used it at a major trade show is here at AUVSI. So we're very excited.
Cool. Do you guys have a booth here?
We do.
Oh, okay.
Actually, we're sharing it with the Mid-Atlantic Aviation Partnership, which is our test site.
That's right. Okay, I've heard of them. Excellent. So, okay, what's your background? So I introduced your title a little bit earlier, but tell us a little bit about the background of Karen Jackson and kind of, how you came here today.
Yeah, so I actually consider myself a bit of an accidental tourist in politics. I'm an MBA from the College of William and Mary by training. Had a technical background in IT before that, and started with the state many years ago, just trying to leverage those two skill sets, and have managed to move up. I was a Deputy Secretary of Technology under the two previous administrations since 2009, and have obviously been in this job since beginning of 2014 with the McAuliffe administration.
And so how did you become the Secretary of Technology for the Commonwealth of Virginia? Is this a elected position? Is this an appointed position by the governor?
Yeah, this is actually an appointed position. So I'm the first female to hold the position, which is a very huge point of pride for me to finally have made it to that level. But Governor McAuliffe was gracious enough to allow me to hold a post and to appoint me.
That's amazing. So you've been here since, you said 2014 you've been doing this, and I guess that's tied to the governor's term and then re-election and all that stuff.
It is, except for Virginia is the one state left that we don't have re-election options. So we're a one-term governorship.
Okay.
So our term comes to an end at the end of this year in January.
Okay.
Beginning of 2018, we move on.
Awesome. Okay. Good to know. Speaking of that, so speaking of the uniqueness of the state of Virginia, or should I say Commonwealth, so we were talking briefly before we started recording. What is a Commonwealth? And you were mentioning something about cell towers or wind turbines or something. Like, what is the difference between a state and a Commonwealth? It
boils down really to the way that the governance is handled within the state. So a lot of the options of government or the actual governance is pushed down to the municipalities at the local level. So in some states, and this was a cell tower example, if you wanted to site a cell tower in some states, it's very centralized. You can go to one place, get all the permits you need. In a Commonwealth, in a Dillon Rule state, a lot of those activities are pushed down to the local level, which is great, and we're very happy to be a Commonwealth, meaning everybody benefits, except when you start to do placement, you start to set up regulatory environments, such as what we're looking at for UAVs, It can get more complicated when each individual locality tries to set up its own governance And so flight restrictions or no-fly areas get very complicated when they're popping up all across the state, and it would just be a real detriment. So it's a very good thing, and we're very proud to be a Commonwealth, but it does come with it just an added responsibility that you have to watch and make sure that the activities at the local level don't start to supersede some of the activities at the state level.
So I want to touch on that, a little bit later, specifically about how that works with federal versus state, and then Commonwealth regulations, how that kind of all plays out, and some of the challenges. But so what is your kind of like mission statement? What do you do in your job as the Secretary of Technology for the Commonwealth of Virginia? Sorry, I have to like keep looking back at my notes because it's kind of a long, it's not exactly the shortest official title, but what are your responsibilities and what are your objectives in this position?
So I have a very unique position. I think I have the coolest job of all the cabinet members. I'm sure some of my cohorts would probably disagree with me, but I cover everything from cybersecurity to unmanned systems, data analytics. I consider myself the first in. So when there's a new technology that has the opportunity to provide economic development, either jobs or R&D or any kind of opportunities for the Commonwealth, I'm usually the first one in to look at it, see what our assets are, see how we can play in that space. And then as it becomes a more traditional industry, then it moves on to our Commerce and Trade Secretariats and others that can take it on down the line. So really, I consider myself one of the first in. I also oversee the state's infrastructure, so I have a chief information officer and a chief information security officer that report to me, and about 80,000 state employees that ride the network that we oversee on any given day. So it's a pretty broad plate.
Big team.
Of three.
Oh, okay, three. But then you have the whole, rest of the.
Sure, we have three people actually that are in the Secretariat office, but we have a broad team, obviously, at state agencies and other places within state government that we leverage to help us with our mission.
So being at Exponential here at AVSI's Exponential event with the Mid-Atlantic
Aviation Partnership.
What would be a success? What would make this show a success for you guys, this conference? Like, I guess it ties in with your main goals, but are you trying to attract more companies or startups to try to, develop this technology for cybersecurity and unmanned systems and driverless vehicles and things in Virginia? Is that kind of like the big, what would be like a big win if you're like, oh, this is great, we just did something like that?
It's hard to pick one big win because Virginia is really unique in the fact that we have testing opportunities and R&D opportunities for automated cars on the land, in the water as well as and in the air. So we're unique in that we have all three modalities. We have portions of our HOV lanes in Northern Virginia that are marked for automated car testing. So we have automated corridors in the northern part of the state. We have Virginia Tech's Transportation Institute, which is a test track down in the rural area parts of the state. We have NASA Langley. So we have a really wide breadth of assets that we can bring to bear. And so I think if walking away from here, part of it is exposure to let people get a better understanding of what Virginia does have to offer because it is such a broad portfolio. If we could walk away and have new startups that want to come to Virginia and can be part of the growth. A lot of the organic growth is where we're seeing the highest amount of job growth. And so we're very excited when young entrepreneurs want to come to the Commonwealth, establish themselves, and then grow their businesses there. If we were able to, land a couple of good contracts for our test site, we certainly wouldn't be unhappy about that. But it's as much about building our brand and making sure that the world knows that Virginia is open, welcoming. We have a great business climate in the Commonwealth, and we really are here to be a major player in this space. Whichever modality you want to pick, that we are open and we are here and we want to be the state for automated systems.
Can you tell us a little bit about the test site? You mentioned the test site. I'm assuming that's like the UAS, drone test site.
Sure.
What exactly is that, and how does that function in the ecosystem of technology in Virginia?
So we are one of the 6 FAA test sites that were chosen back in 2013. We have the nexus for that is in Blacksburg, Virginia, with Virginia Tech. So they are the lead for the test site. What we've done, however, though, is go all over the state and establish COAs in order to cover areas of specificity that we know that customers want. So we have a large corridor in the central part of the state where there's lots of utility lines, there's lots of pipeline, there's lots of railway, and it's a great place to test BVLOS, to start doing, just the power line inspections, to be able to go out there with partners and see how that industry is going to mature, do the testing. And so the test site is really the nexus for going to help get those COAs and then to work with the companies through the process with the FAA, and then hopefully spur them on to commercial success as the opportunities come. Virginia was the home of the first FAA package delivery that was sanctioned. We did that in Wise County, 2016 or 2015. I can't remember the exact year now.
Yeah,
but we
lots
did. Technology's moving really fast.
Yeah. You got a busy job.
I do, but we actually did do a test out there where we used 2 aircraft to deliver medications to a remote area medical clinic that happens every year. And so that was our first kind of, we all called it a Kitty Hawk moment for the Commonwealth.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then we followed that up through that was done obviously in deep cooperation with the test site, but then also Virginia Tech was also the site of an urban test with Google and Project Wing.
Oh yeah.
And the Flying Burrito. And Chipotle. Right. So that also happened in Virginia. So we've established ourselves in a leadership position. And the messaging that we want to get out here is that's what the test site is all about, is being able to take advantage of those opportunities and be a great place for people to experiment with different kind of modalities, combinations of modalities, because we have all 3 and readily accessible through the test site.
That brings up a really important question. Did you get a burrito delivered to yourself?
I did not. It had to stay on the Virginia Tech campus in a very controlled environment. And I was not in Blacksburg that day. So
okay. Well,
I was
maybe
disappointed. Absolutely.
Yeah. You'll have your chance, I'm sure. If
Absolutely.
Anyone, much sooner than I will. I can imagine that.
I hope so.
So your work with unmanned systems then, with drones, it kind of centers around then the test site. But is it a lot of like university research? I mean, are you working directly with companies as well? Is there an opportunity maybe for a company outside of Virginia that wants to, is it beneficial for them to come into Virginia, work with you guys at the test site, and kind of try to push the technology forward in that way?
Absolutely. So our partner in the booth here at the show is the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. That is one of their main missions, is to bring new companies back to Virginia. They also help Virginia companies expand, companies that already exist, but one of their main functions is to bring companies back to Virginia. So what we would love to see is that companies from outside want to come into Virginia. They want to take advantage of not only the technical side of the house, but we're working very diligently with our community colleges, our 4-year institutions, to establish a workforce that's capable of supporting the unmanned systems world and industry, because so many of those jobs are just coming along. And so we're also looking at how the state can become a customer for some of these technologies as well. There's a group in the Shenandoah, in the Charlottesville area, that are actually working on training for public safety. So they've established a training program, and so we're looking at the application side of the house as well as the technology side of the house. So we have the capabilities on both sides, but we're making sure that we're building a complete ecosystem, not just getting so wedged into one piece that a company can't live out its life cycle and be very, very fruitful and happy in the Commonwealth.
State versus national, or Commonwealth versus state versus national, or Commonwealth versus national, or basically everyone versus the FAA. I mean, I don't even know how to phrase it, but there are things that I'm sure that are in, from what I understand, and I'm totally taking liberties here, you want this technology to proliferate into useful ways for society, the economy, the citizens, etc.
Correct.
I don't think, okay, good.
We're in agreement on that one.
Okay, great. So I think the FAA does too. So how does the governor's office of the Commonwealth of Virginia, how does your department deal with FAA regulations? Are you guys able to kind of have those forums and interact with each other to try to, influence their decision by showing proof and these kinds of things? Like, tell us a little about how that works and what the governor's office can do to help.
Yeah, so with the FAA, most of that interaction is directly with the test site because they're the ones actually conducting the flight. Virginia Tech works with them hand in glove every day. From a governor's office standpoint, more we're watching the technology environment from a policy perspective, making sure that when we put in bills, when we put in activity budget, that it's all directed toward the proliferation of the industry, not something that would have the propensity to shut it down or to diminish the opportunities. So a lot of what we do is actually play defense. So we look at bills that come in through our legislature, and if we think that they are going to be a negative toward the industry, we work to either change them or get rid of them, quite frankly, so that we don't slow down the ability of innovation to be able to grow. We've had several instances where people want to knee-jerk and they say we have to put something in place, when sometimes the best thing for a nascent industry is to not put things in place. So while other states have managed to kind of box themselves in with some very unfriendly regulatory environments, Virginia, we really have prided ourselves on tamping down the negative policies that would strangle the industry, both on automated cars as well as aerial.
And do you know how, since it's a Commonwealth or I guess this applies to any state really, if there was a local measure or something that was like, we do not want drones flying above or below, whatever it may be, above 200 feet in this specific area, and we are voting on that. Is that something that can actually happen at like a local level or within the state? Or basically, can it supersede any of the regulations of the FAA? Because I know this is just juicy stuff because it gets super what really can happen?
Well, at the end of the day, the FAA controls the airspace. I don't think there's any of us that aren't keenly aware of that fact. We have had instances where localities have put up no drone zones, I hate to say it that way, but over an entire city. Where that goes awry is you start to create a patchwork within the Commonwealth that really can just cause havoc for operators who are trying to figure out where they can fly, where they can't fly. Obviously, in places like Richmond, where you have the governor's mansion and the state capitol, there are going to be restrictions around things like that, just like there are around critical infrastructure.
Probably
and
even
airports.
For manned aviation as well.
Sure. And so it can become a quick problem, but a couple of years ago, we actually passed a piece of legislation that said that no municipality can create their own rules around UAVs. Now, if it's on private property, if it's over a stadium that belongs to a university, absolutely, that's their purview to do with as they will. But by and large, we actually had situations where there was a locality, and unfortunately, there was an abduction. And when we were called in, the state was called in through the test site to fly, they couldn't fly over the city because there was a moratorium. And so they could only fly in the surrounding county. And so it creates, sometimes people pass things thinking that they're doing good, only not to consider downstream the what ifs. And so we've worked very, very hard with our municipal, with all of our localities and our municipal leagues and our association of counties to make sure that they kind of understand that they need to think the whole process through before they put up regulations. And so when we passed that bill, it made things a lot cleaner. And so far, we've been successful. So we think we've created a great policy environment in Virginia.
Great stuff. That's a great answer to the question. So what is next for your program then? I mean, how do you go from here? You just continue down this path? I mean, I hate to say it, well, no, it's a fact. I mean, your term will be over at some point. So what is next? I mean, do you have hopes for the state of Virginia that you continue on this path? I mean, worries that maybe, it might not be so easy. Like, how does it go from here?
Yeah, so obviously having worked in this as long as I have now, and being part of the team that actually wrote the application to the FAA for the test site, this is I feel like an entrepreneur of sorts with this whole industry in the Commonwealth. So absolutely want it to stay put. The governor is announcing tomorrow that we're creating a center of excellence inside one of our agencies, the Center for Innovative Technology, so that we can move some of the functions that's currently being done in the governor's office into an agency where it'll have more longevity. It won't be as subject to incoming and outgoing administrative turns and churns and different priority sets. They'll give it a stable place to be able to grow and continue even after we're gone. So we're thinking very cognizantly about how we want to move forward. We've invested a lot in the test site. We've invested in beyond visual line of sight mobile radar that's just coming online. It's a very unique piece of equipment amongst the test sites. And so we are continuing to press and to look forward as to how this continues long beyond just this administration.
That's excellent. What is mobile radar, though? What specifically, is it like a radar that's just mobile that can travel around?
It can be picked up and moved from site to site.
Okay.
So we're not building a one spot only range for beyond visual line of sight testing. We can actually pick it up and move it from locality to locality.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, cool. Well, so, thank you so much, Karen, for being a guest on the show. I just want to shout out, if anyone's listening and they want to check out the technology website for the Commonwealth of Virginia, you can go ahead and do that at technology.virginia.gov. And then from there, you can probably find a link to an unmanned specialized website, from what I understand. And then you can actually follow Karen herself on Twitter at Karen in VA. VA stands for Virginia, of course. And while you're doing that, you can go ahead and check out the podcast on Twitter at Drones Podcast. And then if you want, you can support the show. It takes $1 a month, and you can gain access to the private Facebook group by going to patreon.com/dronespodcast. That's patreon.com/dronespodcast. And then we're on Twitter and Facebook at Drones Podcast. So thank you so much for listening. But before we cut off the mics, any last thoughts, Karen?
Just thank you very much for having me here and giving me the chance to talk about the Commonwealth of Virginia. If anybody out there is listening and wants to come to the Commonwealth, please get in touch. We would love to talk to you and love to invite you to the Commonwealth.
You heard it, folks. Get in touch with Karen Jackson directly. No, that was awesome. So thank you again, Karen. Thanks so much for coming. Karen Jackson, Secretary of Technology for the Commonwealth of Virginia. Everybody, take care and fly safe. Cheers.